speaking of conversations, we do have a business update which is going to be focusing on empowering women-led firms to access procurement opportunities. And these opportunities are enormous, but of course there's always been the gap in terms of gender in business-led firms. Those that are women-led, do they get the same accord and treatment in terms of accessing public business, most especially? The backbone of it being that research conducted between 2021 and 2022 by AFIC discovered that only 1% of women-led businesses do participate and win public procurement contracts across the 5 study countries. And these countries are Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and of course Uganda. You look at the barriers that were presented in between there. It was discovered by the research that there is lack of capacity for these women-led firms, lack of access to information by the women-led firms. Access to finance was also another barrier that was discovered out of this AFIC research that was conducted. Now, government officials have made it more convenient for women-led firms to actually take a piece of the pie. They have more regulatory tools and data capacity, and almost 130 women-owned and led businesses are better equipped and positioned today to participate in public procurement. And for the first time, you do have 4 major Ugandan government entities that can do the mathematics on the robust participation metrics to do understand of this inclusion metrics. So this is a step in the right direction, but of course it's a collaborative step that has had to lead us to this conversation this day, empowering women-led firms to access procurement opportunities. I am Priscilla Regina Naluoga. Now, to help me dissect this information further, we do have the Executive Director of the PPDA, and that is Mr. Benson Turiamwe. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, even though we're in February. Yes.
Good morning, viewers.
It's a pleasure to have you.
I'm glad to be here too.
Well, of course, we do have Africa Freedom of Information Center that conducted the research that I was talking about earlier, and the Executive Director, Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa, is also joining us for this discussion. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You're most welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us here. Good morning, dear viewers.
All right. Okay, getting into it, let's first understand where AFIC came to actually want to take a direction of research into women-led enterprises and firms and businesses in terms of accessing public procurement opportunities.
Yes, thank you very much. Our governments, through the United Nations, prioritized addressing gender inequality as one of the key priorities in a sustainable development framework. And from the studies and information that we're looking at, especially in procurement markets, we found that whereas public procurement could be an important policy instrument to lift women and assist governments in achieving gender equality targets, the participation of women was very low. And therefore, we designed this research to understand what are the barriers, what are the opportunities, and what are some of the emerging lessons and good practices that governments can take on to address this challenge, so that through public procurement, inequality could be addressed. So that was the background to our research. So we went then ahead to conduct this research in the 5 countries that have been mentioned. And we found so many barriers, but we grouped them according to 3 baskets or clusters. The first one was relating to policy and legal barriers. That policies were blind to the fact that, businesses are different, capacities are different, and yet the rules and policies, were the same, not taking cognizance of these differences. The second category of barriers were related to operational and capacity challenges of women-owned businesses. Many of them lack access to information on government procurement opportunities. That is across the board. many of them lacked capacity to prepare, first of all, to interpret, prepare, and submit responsive bids. And those who managed to do so struggled with implementation of contracts that had been awarded. In Tanzania and Kenya, where governments had already put in place affirmative policies, we found that there were significant implementation challenges, corruption, lack of intentionality in implementing these policies, lack of policy monitoring, lack of gender desegregated data, especially in Kenya. And in Tanzania, nothing had been done. The law had been amended in 2016, but then implementation had not taken place. And this provided important lessons for Uganda and other countries which were yet to adopt these affirmative policies to take advantage of the lessons that were emerging from the two countries, Kenya and Tanzania, so that the policies that they came up with can take into account what needs to be done, for these policies to have intended goals. Now, as a result, for example, in Uganda, the government amended the PPDA Act in July 2021 to reserve contracts for special groups, including women, youth, and persons with disabilities. And last year, on March 21st, PPDA issued guidelines to operationalize this affirmative action. In short, these guidelines require that 15% of procurement budget of every government entity, ministry, department, or agency should be reserved for these special groups, women, youth, and persons with disabilities. Also, that contracts below 30 million for central government agencies should be, these groups should be prioritized, and contracts below 10 million in the case of local governments should also go to these groups. So in a way, in the case of Uganda, you can see like a good correlation between this policy intent and also manifesto commitments of the NRM, which speak about leaving no one behind by ensuring that people can take a fair share of the national cake.
Okay, all right. So now we turn to the PPDA. There's the amendment that was done in 2021. We look at the, operationalization and also implementation, which I think it's a discussion that we had with you here at MorningAT NTV last year. And we want to now find an assessment, monitoring and evaluation so far of the months that have moved in operationalization of the policy amendments and how they've benefited women-led farms.
Okay, thank you very much. And the starting point in operationalizing this reservation guideline was to have women registered, and an intentional drive was made to invite women, youth, and persons with disabilities come and register with PPDA. So far, we have registered 176 enterprises or business enterprises that can participate in women. We have gone further to train a number of them on how to prepare what he was talking about as a barrier, preparing winning bids. But further, we have prepared simplified bidding documents. We have also partnered with the Uganda Revenue Authority in terms of registration requirements. Because if you are to register currently as any other business, to do business, to any other firm or business enterprise to do business with the government, you are required to, the fee is between 150 and 200. But for this particular group, they are paying only 50,000. So it is important to pay because you don't want to register even as non-starters who register for the sake of it. We have removed the registration fee at PPDA because others pay some fee to register at PPDA. So if you are going to do business with government, I mean bidding fees, they usually ask you buy this document, and it can range from 100,000 to 100,000, depending on the entity that is procuring. So for this group, we have communicated to entities that they are exempted from being charged bidding fees. We are yet to confirm the responsiveness, but there is good responsiveness. I was even impressed this week, actually. Uganda Revenue put in an advert specifically for these women, for this group, saying these procurements are reserved
Designated,
for this group. So we are closely monitoring. We have also revised our monitoring documents, templates, to ensure that the reports that come from government entities show us how many contracts have been awarded to women users and persons with disabilities. So that will help us even when we are doing our audits, our procurement audits. Our templates have now provided for that, so that every entity, we ensure that the 15% he talked about of the procurement budget is spent on this group.
Okay. On the side of the government entities and them having to constantly, interact with you in presenting reports on how they are awarding the contracts, what has been discovered from your side in line with this policy revision?
Well, there is positive adoption. The entities have also known that if you are to develop this country, you need to have this group included. Especially even after population census, you realize that the youth, the women, are the majority of this country. And if you are to develop Uganda, then they must take a share of the 60% of the budget, the total budget. So if we are saying out of 60%, you are taking 15. But actually, I would also want to tell you that they are not prohibited from participating in the other 45%. So 15% is just put aside for them, but even they can participate and compete with men in the other 45%.
Okay.
So they have adopted it. They have put them, actually the plans, the procurement plans that they submit to Minister of Finance and PPDA have also clearly isolated or identified procurements that are going to benefit this group. Our work is to prepare them, to have them, to have knowledge, to have information that these opportunities exist, and they will participate. We'll maybe after 1 year of implementation, because we are talking about 2024, that's when the guidelines became effective. After 1 year of implementation, we should come back with clear evaluation and say this is now what they have taken in terms of monetary value, monetary share, and the number of contracts that they have been awarded.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Sendugwa, in this regard, I know that on your side you've also been able to watch and evaluate how effective some of these changes have been to women-led enterprises in Uganda. Talk to us about some of those positive effects.
Yeah, first of all, what we learned from all this is that policy matters, and it kind of initiates or triggers what or other things that happen after that. So working with PPDA, we have piloted these guidelines in 4 entities: Kampala Capital City Authority, Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, Wakiso District Local Government, and Mbara District Local Government. And of course, within the limits of resources, available resources, we have trained 215 women-owned businesses. These are enterprises that were already established but had never done anything about public procurement. And many of them have registered in the government supplier database, which is a very important first step, because you can't do business with government when you are not registered in the government supplier database. 79 of these have already bidded for different opportunities in the 4 entities. So what we learn from this is that, yes, policy is important, but not enough. There has to be significant efforts on building capacities of women-owned businesses, youth-owned businesses, and of course PWD-owned businesses, and create awareness, making sure that they have access to information on the opportunities that are available for them, and then once they have this information, to be able to prepare responsive bids. What we also observe is that policy monitoring is very, very crucial, and I think government needs to invest more in this area, because the guidelines became effective on March 21st last year, but many of the entities are yet to issue the first contract to these special groups. Yet the law requires that they do so. Also, PPDA has amended the fields on the government procurement portal to provide for entities to capture and report gender desegregated data. On a positive note, quite a number of the entities, especially those that are under this pilot, are reporting this data, but the majority are yet to start doing so. Now, without reporting on this data, it will be difficult, for example, for PPD and all the other stakeholders to confirm the extent to which each of these individual agencies are complying with the law in terms of the percentage of budget going to these special groups, and also those that are complying with the thresholds that are required to empower these groups. So there's a need for government to invest on the one hand, ensuring that people have information, ensuring that business of these special groups have capacity to bid and execute these contracts, and then on the other, for the regulators like PPDA to have the resources and means to enforce the law, and support also where support is needed for entities to be able to comply with the law and lift these special groups.
All right. Mr. Turamwe, would like to know of some tangible success stories that the PPDA has actually worked with to ensure that this is a reality for women-led firms in Uganda in getting opportunities through public procurement.
It is too early to measure the impact of this policy, given the time. But the responsiveness is what I can really talk about, because I would say the registered women on PPDA portal were not there. But because of this effort, they are coming and they are registering. Because the fear was that they are always edged out when they compete with men. Then the success rate is very low.
Okay.
Because of, I don't know, but maybe aggressiveness of men, And also these barriers we were talking about, especially the financing, knowing that they are not going to get finances to implement these contracts. And if you also, of course, you have heard people talk about corruption in public procurement. Women are, I would say, are fearful. They don't comply with corruption tendencies.
Readily comply, yes.
So, but when they are competing alone, I think some of those voices also are going to help us in curbing some of those voices.
What are some of the sectors that have actually picked the interests of women?
No, if we are talking about procurement specifically, there are works, we have works contract, but smaller works, because we have not seen women now going to register in like big works, road works and whatever. But if they are road maintenance, making like culverts for culvert boxes for road works.
Okay.
We are talking about catering services. They are in that actually they have monopolized that services. We are talking about cleaning services. Every government entity has a contract in cleaning, and most of the contractors or the providers are actually women farms.
Okay.
You are talking about supply of logistics like stationery in offices. Office stationery is a big consumable item in government offices. You are talking about events management. Actually, that one also, the youth are mostly there in events management. The IT equipment like computers, laptops, printing is another area where you will find women are. Of course, initially, it was not properly understood because there are people who are in businesses that are not consumed by government. And that is the message we are putting. If you are supplying, for example, eggs, as you are in poultry and the government doesn't buy eggs, so how do you now link with someone who is in catering services?
Okay.
So that you have that connection.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, as we get to have full realization of this implementation process, as the PPDA, what's your call to action focusing on these groups?
Sorry?
What's your call to action focusing on women-led enterprises in order to uptake these opportunities that the PPDA has designated for them?
You see, PPDA, first of all, our focus is maybe our vision, a dynamic facilitator, public procurement system for sustainable national development. We have a role. We are not in the regulation, we are not saying don't. We are saying we facilitate you to do business. And when we are facilitating you for purpose of national development. So our intervention is not just to have procurement for the sake of having procurement, but what does procurement that is consuming the largest budget of government, contributing to the national development. And that's why if you talk about sustainability of national development, then inclusion is a big factor. You can't have a small portion of the population and you leave the others and you think you are developing this country. And that is the focus. And that's even in our messages, we emphasize other sustainability efforts. In supplying your computers and laptops, how have you taken care of sustainability in terms of maybe energy consumption, in terms of disposal, because it is PPDA procurement and disposal. Where are you disposing? You are all these things that the government is using. Okay. So that's where we are moving. Right. By including women, who have good listening ear, then we believe that at the end of the day, we are doing sustainable national development.
All right, thank you so much, Executive Director, PPDA, and that is Mr. Benson Turamwe. We also are thankful for AFIC and the Executive Director, Mr. Santokwa, for your continued efforts in helping government realize the gaps and thereon fill in with actionable steps. That brings us to the end of this conversation.